Here's some stuff that's introduced in Windows Server 2016. So since 2012 was released, actually. So first thing is Nano Server. Nano Server is basically, so Nano Server is an installation option for Server 2016. It doesn't have any graphical user interface or command prompt interface, and basically because of that, it doesn't have all of that overhead to support those things. So a lower hardware requirement than even Server Core. Nano Server is, as it says, an ideal platform for Hyper-V, Hyper-V clusters, scale-out file servers, and cloud service apps. There's container and Docker support. So containers and Hyper-V containers are two slightly different things, but basically they use the container methodology to manage things. So you can isolate apps from the operating system environment using containers, basically isolating them from the operating system environment, which basically makes them more secure and more reliable and isolated. So Windows containers are isolated from one another but run on the host operating system. So they run using host operating system resources. Whereas Hyper-V containers, on the other hand, are further isolated because they run within their own kernel, their own virtual machine. So different so Windows containers versus Hyper-V containers. Docker support is now available. So Docker is basically a management protocol for managing containers, and so Docker is usually a Linux-based thing. It's now available on Windows as well. So it's support for Docker as a means for managing containers, both Windows containers and Hyper-V containers. Hot add and remove virtual memory and network adapters are now available for Hyper-V machines. That's kind of cool because that's a pretty common thing to want to be able to do, to hot add and remove virtual memory and network adapters for those things. Nested virtualization is now supported. Nested virtualization means I'm going to use a virtual machine as a virtual machine host and then run virtual machines on a virtual machine, which almost sounds redundant, but it's a useful mechanism in this day and age. You have PowerShell Direct, which is kind of an interesting idea. So again, just kind of following along in the book, this is introduced down at position 1637. Anyway, lets you run PowerShell commands against a guest operating system on a Hyper-V machine. So without handling security policies, host network settings, or firewall settings, so that you can basically locally remote to a guest virtual machine on a host. So PowerShell Direct allows you to use PowerShell directly on those virtual machines that are in there. You have shielded virtual machines. Basically, you can protect the data on them from unauthorized access by shielding them. Windows Defender is provided now to protect, to give native anti-malware protection. So anyway, the Defender interface is not installed by default. The anti-malware pattern signatures are automatically kept up to date, which is kind of cool. You have Storage Spaces Direct, so lets you build highly available storage with directly attached disks on each node in a cluster. So again, SMB3 as a protocol provides the resiliency under that. You have Storage Replica, so you can synchronously or asynchronously replicate volumes at the block level on disks. And then finally, Microsoft Passport. So this service did something else in the past. Now it replaces passwords with two-factor authentication. Again, it's an enrolled device and a Windows Hello authentication or PIN. So an enrolled device, so ahead of time saying, this is my device, allows me to use multi-factor authentication or even biometric authentication by utilizing that capability, the passport.